Hey, welcome to the Credo commentary. I'm Ryan, and I'm going to be with you today. And again, since these are little short videos, it's not the two of us, so Chris isn't here. But hey, that's all right. We're going to have a good time, anyways. So, in our last full episode, the one where we talked about words being offensive, Chris made the statement where he said emotions lie to us. And I agreed with him. I said, yeah. And we didn't go on because that's not what the episode wasn't about emotions. We were talking about people being offended, but since they tie in so closely, I wanted to go back and examine that statement and ask the question, do our emotions actually lie to us? And I wanted to expand on that a little bit and talk about our emotions, because when we look at the world around us, people are basically maxed out on their emotions. Chris actually said too in that episode that sometimes he feels like people wake up with the attitude of, what can I be offended by today? And, that's funny, but I don't think that's true. I don't think people actually wake up with that thought. I think that people's emotions are at such a high level right now in our country that it's so easy to get offended, because when our emotions are high, offense comes easily. So the question, though, that I wanted to go back to is, do our emotions lie to us? And the answer is yes and no. Sometimes our emotions may misrepresent what's happening. In that case, they are kind of lying to us. Like, just take a silly example. Like a leaf is falling next to you, but you think it's a bug flying at you. So you react in a little bit of a panic, and maybe there's some fear if you're afraid of bugs or something. But it was just a leaf falling. Did your emotions lie to you? Well, yes, in that they weren't appropriate to the situation. You shouldn't be afraid of a leaf falling. But if it was a roach flying at you, yeah, run and hide, burn it down, whatever you got to do, get away from that thing. No roaches. But it was a leaf. And so in that sense, your emotions kind of lied to you, but did they really? Well, not really. What happened was you had a misperception of the situation, and your emotions reacted completely in line with your perception of that situation. And so that's really what happens with feelings, is they technically don't lie to us. They actually tell us exactly what we're feeling and how we're perceiving any situation. You see, feelings are facts. We all have them. And oftentimes we look at our emotions or our feelings and we kind of portray them as the enemy. And we say things like, you shouldn't be feeling the way you're feeling, or that feelings can cloud your judgment, or maybe we don't trust them because they lied to us. And these are all very common and accepted views that we have towards emotions. But one of the most basic things about emotions is that they're actually very important. And while we don't want to be controlled by them, and we want to have correct perceptions of the situations and circumstances, our emotions are actually important. And they're not premeditated. They're an involuntary response to our perception of whatever the outward circumstance is. And so anytime that we have emotions that we think are less socially acceptable, I'll get back into that, we tend to pretend like they don't exist. We bottle them up, especially in the church. We tend to bottle up emotions that we don't think others want to hear about. But these emotions do exist, and you do feel what you feel. I like, when speaking about emotions, I like to use the terms heavy emotions and light emotions. And what do I mean by that? Heavy emotions would be things like anger, jealousy, frustration, typically ones that people like to refer to as the bad emotions, and ones that people usually call good emotions, like joy or love, or, well, love I could argue is not actually an emotion, but just different things like that. Happiness, contentment, fulfillment, like those kind of emotions I like to call light. The reason I don't like to use the words good and bad is because those are words that are basically assigning morality. But emotions do not have morality. Happy is not a good moral emotion. Anger is not a bad immoral emotion. Jesus experienced anger when he flipped over the tables, when he was talking to the Pharisees and called them a brood of vipers. All kinds of times. God got angry. God has emotions. We're made in the image of God. That's one of the reasons why we have emotions. Jesus felt sorrow at Lazarus' death. He felt stress and anxiety in the garden. He sweated drops of blood. You don't do that when everything is okay. So Jesus never sinned. God is not full of sin. So therefore, those emotions are not immoral. They're not bad to have. And good and happy and joyful are not moral choices. That's just emotions that you feel. Feelings do not have morality. Now, choices have morality. If you're angry and you go out and kill someone, that was a moral choice of how to deal with your anger, and that has morality to it. So our choices, what we do with our emotions, has morality, but our actual emotions do not have morality. So feelings are not a measure of spirituality. So for ourselves, ignoring our feelings, trying to make ourselves more spiritual, is not helpful. And it's ignoring how God made us. And judging someone else's spirituality by looking at their feelings and their emotions, like if they were a better Christian, maybe they wouldn't be jealous, or they wouldn't be scared, or they wouldn't be nervous. That's also a very bad place to be in. That's the bad kind of judgment that Christians are not supposed to have. And it's also not even the right way to judge someone's spirituality. Well, getting back into emotions, there's a right and a wrong way to handle our emotions. And let's talk about the wrong way to handle our emotions first. The first way that you can mishandle or deal with your emotions poorly is to justify them. Just say, well, of course I'm angry because this and this and this, or of course I got upset because. Justifying our emotions is not really helpful. Maybe at the very beginning, kind of trying to explain why you feel that way and come up with that, but to sit there in a place of justification and saying, I'm justified to feel this way, is not actually helpful. Even if it's true, it's still not actually helpful. The second way we can mishandle our emotions is to misidentify them. There's very often one emotion may mask another. For example, anger tends to mask a lot of other emotions. Like if a child is running into a street and the mother yells at the kid to get back on the driveway or whatever, it may sound angry. And the mother may initially feel like she's angry for her child for disobeying, but in reality, she's scared. And that's a pretty obvious one. But very often, maybe we have something, we feel threatened by something. We feel scared for our future, scared for our financial security, scared for someone's health, and things may come out as anger. And so misidentifying an emotion won't help you deal with it. If you're like, I'm always angry, but in reality, you're just really scared, or you're really nervous, or you're insecure, but if you identify it as anger, it's not going to help you to deal with the actual problem. Hiding your feelings or trying to do right works to prove that you're okay. Or in other words, like if you're angry with your spouse, so you try to do a whole bunch of good things for them to try to prove that you're not angry with them. Also not helpful. Letting our feelings out crooked. And by that, what I mean is, like say you're at work and your boss makes you mad, but you can't lash out at your boss because you're going to get fired. So you come home and you lash out at your spouse at the first thing they say. That's letting your feelings out crooked. You're not really angry with them. You're angry at someone else, or you're angry about a situation, but you're lashing out at people that aren't involved with that. That's letting your feelings out crooked. And then being controlled by your feelings is also a bad way to handle them. You're just allowing however you feel to come in and control the mood of your day, or starting to have passive aggressive behavior towards people because of your emotions, or actions of avoiding situations that bring out your emotions. These are all kinds of ways that emotions are controlling, and those are all bad ways to handle your emotions. But there are proper ways to handle your emotions. So the first thing that you need to do to properly handle your emotions is to know how you feel. Not how you think you should feel, but actually know how you actually feel. This will lead to being in control of your emotions. And this doesn't automatically mean that you're controlling them. This is just the first step, but it's taking time to actually feel what you're actually feeling. And this is where I was saying, get rid of those masking emotions. just to let you know, fine, good, lousy, those are not feelings. Actually figure out what it is that's going on and why are you feeling this way. Heavy feelings, or any feelings for that matter, are not automatically relationship damaging. And letting other people know how you're feeling can actually avoid getting yourself into a position where you have relationship damage. Number two way to handle your emotions properly is, I'm going to go with the verse that says, be angry and do not sin. But I would say, be whatever the emotion is and do not sin. In other words, maybe if you're angry, don't go looking for reinforcements to further your anger. Don't go spend your time ruminating about how you feel. Don't go into abusive mode and start putting other people down, lashing out at people, obviously hitting, being physically abusive, mocking people. We should look at Ephesians 4:32 that says, be kind. We want to actually continue to display Christ-likeness even when we're experiencing heavy emotions or when we're going through periods of high emotive energy time. We also want to accept each other in the midst of their emotions. Our feelings are fact. They don't indicate our spirituality, like I said before. And most of our emotions have a deeper root in them. If you're dealing with someone who's at a heavy emotion time, it's not the time to fully reject them. And when someone is setting off your emotions, it's not the time to fully reject them. Now, I will say that if you are topped off and they've really set you off, it's probably a time to excuse yourself from their presence, but come back at another time to talk this out and deal with it. This is one of the things that we see happening all the time in our world today is two people have two different opinions. Maybe in our episode, we talked about pronouns, and some people say, hey, we should use their pronoun, someone's pronouns, and other people are saying, no, I'm only going to use these because, that's what the Bible says and everything. And what we don't want to have happen from that is to set off the emotions and say, look, because you believe in this one thing differently than I do, or maybe it's several things, then we can't be friends, or we can't even hang out or have a civil conversation. But yeah, that's what's happening in our world. And I think it's because everyone's living at such a high emotional state and people don't know how to deal with them. And I want to say to the people in the church, we need to learn how to deal with our emotions properly, because the last thing that should be happening is that kind of division, or that kind of like canceling a person or ignoring a person or saying, I'm not going to have anything to do with that person, should never be happening in the church. But I've seen it. I've been in churches where there are people that are having disagreements and disputes, and they're like on opposite sides of the building, and they won't talk to each other. They pass each other in the hallways and turn their heads to the side, like, I'm not even acknowledging that you're here. And that's wrong. You need to be willing to have these conversations and come to them and say, yeah, let's deal with this. Let's talk this out. We need to be able to, another way to handle our emotions properly is to learn how to empathize with the person who is setting off our emotions. Stop to think about, what does it look like from their side? Now, I'm not saying that we need to always change our thinking. We may be in the right on something and maybe they're in the wrong, but we need to at least be able to look at it from their perspective, spend some time to try to understand why they're feeling like they're feeling and why what they're doing is setting you off. We're actually made to exist in opposites. And what I mean by that is we may have contradictory feelings and actions, and that's okay. For example, sometimes we may doubt God, but yet we would still follow him. Or maybe you're angry with your spouse, but you still love them. Maybe you probably see this with your children. I'm just infuriated with my children, but I love them to pieces. Maybe you want to tell a lie, but instead you tell the truth. You're scared, but you do it anyways. This is existing in opposites. And existing in opposites is a sign of maturity. Part of maturity is that when we're feeling heavy emotions, we can actually choose to love and to put others first when we're responding to them. And that is a mature place to be. But when you can't do that, when all you can do is somebody calls out a position that you think the opposite on, and all you can do is call them a name and leave in a huff, that's not maturity. That's definitely not Christian maturity. So our emotional responses become a result of our value that we have in Christ. If we know that Christ loves us, if we're seated in our identity, knowing that God loves us, knowing that Jesus gave his life for us, knowing that he traded his righteousness for our sin so that we are perfect before him and seen as holy before God, then we know that we have strong value and we don't have to rely on others to give us our value. So when they disagree with us, it doesn't devalue us and we can have a normal conversation with them. Hey, I hope that this is helpful to you. I just wanted to follow up on that because we talked about that in that episode. And this is a commentary. This is time for me to give sort of my commentary on what we talked about. And that was something I wanted to bring out. So if you like this, go ahead and give us a subscribe, a thumbs up, comment, ask us a question. And I also wanted to say that if you have something that you want us to do commentary on, maybe something that you thought of during one of the episodes, or something that you heard somewhere else and you want to hear commentary on it, drop us a question. Put it in the comments section. We read all of them. Email us at thecredoreport@gmail.com. I'll throw that on the screen. And we'll get back to you. So with that, we'll see you next week.